Operation Baby Lift was the name given to the mass evacuation of children from South Vietnam to the United States and other countries, including Australia, France, and Canada, at the end of the American War. By the final American flight out of South Vietnam, over 3,000 infants and children were airlifted from Vietnam and adopted by families around the world. Kim Browne is one of them. A day in 1975, Kim was brought into the Gov Up orphanage, now known as the Gov Up Center for Child Care and Protection in Ho Chi Minh City. All efforts to find any traces of Kim's birth parents were in vain. A frail baby Kim was continuously falling ill and had to be admitted into an intensive care unit along with more than 100 other babies. Maureen and Desmond Browne, a young couple from the UK, made the decision to adopt Kim. She would then join many other children in the flight to leave Vietnam on the day the country was reunited, April the 30th, 1975. Kim had barely reached 2.5 months of age. 25 years have passed and Kim still cherishes the hope of one day finding her long-lost birth family. Not only embarking on a search of her own, she has also connected with others in the same situation, helping to bring them back to Vietnam, their motherland, after nearly 40 years apart.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Talk Vietnam. Our guest today is Kim Browne, and she is one of the last babies airlifted from the then Saigon of April 1975. She's now the founder of the Vietnam Volunteer Network, and we're here today to hear her stories and her efforts of seeking aid for those in need in Vietnam, particularly Agent Orange victims and orphans, and also her efforts in connecting Vietnamese adoptees worldwide. Do stay with us as we'll hear her moving stories and also her journey in reconnecting to her roots. Hello, Kim.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
A little bit tired. It's been a hectic trip so far, but
yes.
I'm very happy to be here.
Wonderful. We'll definitely talk about your trip this time to Vietnam. But first of all, let me ask you a little bit about 2010. It was a very important event, and you were on the administrative board of a meeting, a reunion, the journey back after 35 years apart, or Operation Reunite. Can you tell us a little bit about this operation?
April 2010, a little under 100 of us came back to Vietnam. And again, there was a mixture of us that were returnees that had come back to Vietnam before, and some had never been back at all.
Exactly.
And it was an absolutely fantastic experience where, you know, we got to meet each other. Some of us had just met on Facebook or on Skype. And because we were connected from America, Australia, the UK, France, Sweden.
Wow.
This was the first time we'd actually met each other for some of us, so it was an amazing experience. What was even more amazing was then a lot of Vietnamese people who had given their children up, either by accident, thinking that they were giving their children to a daycare centre, or they wanted their children to have a better life because they were frightened at the end of the war that they were poor. They wanted to get back in touch with all of us adoptees. So again, I think about over 100 people from Vietnam, from all areas, came to this press conference. So that was absolutely wonderful, meeting them and seeing how they kept all of the photos and documents of these babies in perfect condition, told us about their love stories or their actual stories as well, about what had happened, how they'd lost their babies, or you know, why they'd given them up. Really touched a lot of the adoptees and obviously myself.
Of these adoptees, have you heard about whether they have been able to find a connection or trace back to their birth parents?
Not to birth parents. There's a fantastic initiative that Trista Goldberg, who is the founder of Operation Reunite, created, and it's the DNA database. So a few of the adoptees have submitted their DNA, and so far I would say several of them have found second cousins and third cousins, especially I think the Amerasian or mixed adoptees. So that has been absolutely fantastic news from that actual project.
Wonderful. How about for yourself? Have you found any traces leading back to your birth parents?
Unfortunately not. I only have my birth mother's name, which was Nguyen Thai Lee.
Miễn Thai Lee.
And I do not know my father's name. And unfortunately, as my documents were lost as I was flown out, I have no other records.
Yes.
And I was hoping that perhaps from the press conference that maybe somebody would have recognized me on television and said, oh, she looks like a family member or something.
Aww.
And unfortunately not. But
Yes.
I live in hope that one day somebody might recognize me as theirs.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Now, did your adoptive parents ever tell you about how you looked like, or, you know, what happened when they did adopt you?
I was very sick. I was dying from salmonella when I landed. So I was a lot tinier than a 2.5-month-old would look. My parents just said that I had a lot of hair standing on my head. So it was very, very spiky, and that was very, very tiny. And that's basically what they remembered about me.
Did you have anything on you that would help your parents, your adoptive parents, to identify who you were?
They had a photo of me where a nun in white was holding me as a baby. So they had that back in England. And when I arrived in London, I had on my wrist my birth name and my adopted parents' name and my birth date. So then it was easy for the social services and my parents to then say, she's mine.
Yes. Share with us your birth name. I understand that your surname must have been Nguyễn because it's now in Kim Browne's name.
Yes.
So what was your original name?
Nguyen Son Thuy.
Nguyễn Sơn Thuy. So Sơn like mountain and Thuy
like water.
Water.
Yes.
Mountain and water. Beautiful name.
Thank you.
Do they still keep anything that you had worn that day? Maybe like a bib, a hat, or?
Unfortunately not. I don't think I was wearing much except a nappy when I was flown out.
Oh.
And as I mentioned, I was actually dying when I was flying out, and the doctors in the UK said to my mum, really, that they didn't think it was a good idea for her to get so close to me because I was so sick and she might catch salmonella. But my mum is a very tough lady, very loving but tough, and she had tried for years to adopt a baby and she did not give up on me. So she nursed me, cared for me, loved me, force-fed me, and here I am today.
Yes. Well, you have her to thank for that.
Yes. My mum and my dad have been fantastic at explaining why I was adopted, that my birth mother did the best thing because there was a war on, there was poverty, and I was very sick, so I should always grow up thanking her for what she did. And that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back and to Vietnam with the hope that one day I might bump into her.
Very touching. Let's take your memory as far back as you can. How did you feel knowing that you were Vietnamese, that you came from Vietnam?
Very proud. Very, very proud. My parents had always told me to research Vietnam, to research about the war, and to make my own opinion, and to show me the beautiful culture that I had come from and what a fighting spirit Vietnam has, and that they think that my personality is also very much a fighter. Whenever I believe in something or a cause, I go for it and I do my best and don't stop until I've completed that project to perhaps help or do something. whatever it may be, that I'm passionate about. And my parents say that must be my Vietnamese blood.
Yes, the Vietnamese side kind
Yes.
of shining. Tell us, at what age, I mean, did the curiosity kind of grow throughout the years about your roots, about your Vietnamese origins? Or at what age did you decide, oh, I'm going to find out more about Vietnam and I'm going to make the initiative to kind of find out more?
I'd always had that feeling inside me, and my parents had always encouraged it. But because I was flown out undocumented, my adoptive parents had this fear that if I was to go back to Vietnam, that perhaps the government would keep me. So it wasn't really until I was older that I was then allowed to come back to Vietnam that, you know, on my 25th birthday, my whole family took me here.
Yes, 2001, yes?
That's correct, yes.
Tell us about this first visit back.
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. The heat completely got to me. It was just like, wow. Because living in England, obviously, the weather is a lot cooler.
Yes.
And
were you anxious?
Excited. Excited to land and touch the Vietnamese soil. I was very, very excited. And just as we were declining and coming into the airport, I was just looking around at the houses and the river and just could not wait to touch ground.
Yes, Ho Chi Minh City, right?
That's correct, yes.
Ho Chi Minh City.
And I think the minute I actually got off the plane, I actually touched the ground. And I was like, I'm home. So,
you've described it as a dream come true.
Definitely. To see the people, because obviously growing up in the UK, I'm not going to see like Vietnamese people around. So I suppose it's a case of wondering who looks like me. So I was looking at every old person, wondering, could I be related to you? Looking at every young person about my age or a little bit younger, thinking, could you be my brother? Could you be my sister? All of these thoughts were going through my head. And just to smell the air, the Vietnamese air, to then taste the food, real Vietnamese food, was completely a dream come true for me. And just to go out and to explore the Mekong Delta, the Cu Chi tunnels and everything was just, everything I'd read about and seen on TV was finally a reality for me.
What other kind of experience did you take from this very first visit back?
I noticed the strength of the Vietnamese women. I noticed the poverty as well. And I wanted to come back and help in some way, shape or form. But it wasn't until 2005 when I returned that, again with my mum this time, and my sister, who was adopted from Thailand, we were on the Mekong Delta. And we were just talking about Go Vap Orphanage because we were under the impression that it had been bombed during the war. And the tour guide actually said, no, Go Vap is still there. I sometimes volunteer and teach English there. So I was like, oh my God, you know, this is absolutely amazing. It was a complete shock.
The orphanage from which you had originally been flown from.
Exactly.
Yes, in 1975, and here you are back in 2005, so 30 years, exactly 30 years after, it was still there. And did you visit it?
No, unfortunately, I had to fly out to Bangkok the next morning, and it was quite late. So I was devastated. But when I got back to England, I did a lot of research. And then I had started in 2006 my job at Danone, and they had a competition called Do You Dare to Dream? So only after a few months of starting this company, I entered this competition, wrote that my dream was to come back to Vietnam, find my birth mother, to thank her, to thank the staff and the nuns who cared for us babies, and to give back to the orphanage in some way, shape or form. And believe it or not, I won the competition.
2006, yes.
In 2006. And in 2007, they gave me time off to do fundraising and to contact other manufacturers. And they shipped off all of the aid for me. And then what had happened, it was just really wonderful. They gave me over a month off to volunteer and do my research and look for my mum in Vietnam, as well as to volunteer.
Tell us about this time. How was it working at the orphanage from where you had originally been?
I actually felt like I was at home. When I got back and all of the staff knew that I was a returnee, they treated me like I was their sister. They tried to find information for me. You know, all the time they were giving me food and cafe soda. And everywhere I went, they were just always hugging me and kissing me. And again, I'm very affectionate as well, so there was lots of hugs and kisses, and then they were showing me what I needed to do with the children, whether it was the newborn babies or the malformed children or the terminal children who were suffering from the late stages of hydrocephalus or spina bifida or cerebral palsy. And with the fundraising, I then was able to buy air conditioners, washing machines, a lot of other medical aid, books, toys, copious amounts of sweets for the children, because there are several different wards, and I got to know each and every child and baby and staff member.
How was it like going full circle back to the place where you had originally started?
Extremely emotional, and I'm so glad I had my mum with me. I think after seeing the children and the newborn babies, when I was there, I got a sense of the fact that that was me. All those years ago, that was me. This is where I was housed and looked after. And people took a chance on me and took care of me when I was sick. And I want to give as much as I can back to these children. Yes. And it really did touch me.
Wonderful.
And,
so within just a span of a month, many memories and many help done as well.
Yes.
And now the Gavup Orphanage, it was called that back then, but now it's called the Gavup Center for Childcare and Protection. And in the following, we actually have a footage of you, pictures taken during Kim Browne's first visit to the Gavup Center for Childcare and Protection. And the clip was produced by a New York journalist, so let's have a look at that.
Hi, my name's Kim Browne. I'm actually going back to my orphanage at Gavup for the very first time. After 32 years, I spent my first 2 months of my life at this orphanage, so it was quite an emotional journey going back to see it for the first time. When we toured around the orphanage, it was quite heartbreaking to see all of the disabled children, the ones that had fluid on the brain, and also the Down syndrome children. So I got them some children's books and also toothpaste, toothbrushes, dental floss, which come to about £4,000 in aid. And it's been something within me for a long time now. It's been a dream, and that dream is to go back and to give something back to the orphanage as well. Obviously, they do a fantastic job looking after all of these disadvantaged children and disabled children. So it's something that I felt I needed to do and to move on.
Tell us, have you got any kind of special connection? I mean, you spent 1 month there with the children at the Gavup Center for Childcare and Protection, and you said you know kind of all the children there. So did you have a special connection with any one of them?
Yes, definitely. Nut, who is one of my little babies that I would love to adopt one day. I first saw him and I used to call him my little blue baby because he'd always stop breathing and turn blue. Yeah. And one day I had to help resuscitate him because he'd completely stopped breathing.
What did he suffer from?
He suffered from hydrocephalus,
yes.
And he still does, but he's had an operation. So he just completely touched my heart, and when we resuscitated him, I started singing to him, and then he just burst into tears. Oh. And ever since then, there's been this connection between us, where he's extremely loving and kissing, and He's the most sensitive little boy ever. And it's amazing because whenever he sees a child that needs feeding or is sick, he will point out to that child to get either myself or one of the carers to help that child.
Very considerate.
Extremely considerate and observant. Thuong is the other little girl.
Thuong, yeah.
I took her for an MRI scan because we knew something was wrong with her. And she's actually the baby in the picture.
She's right here.
Yes.
That's an adorable baby.
She's so sweet.
What is she suffering from?
Schizencephaly.
Schizencephaly. And what does that mean?
That means she only has half a brain lobe, which is extremely rare in the world. Despite the fact that she only had half a brain, she's very alert, very affectionate. She loves her hugs and kisses.
Yes.
In fact, all of my volunteers fall in love with her, and Newton, well, they fall in love with all of the children. But she is so beautiful, so beautiful.
It's wonderful that you've been able to kind of keep this connection with certain children. I mean, as you said, I mean, when you look at these children, it's like seeing yourself back in the years because you're at the same center, the same orphanage where you had originally been taken from.
Yes.
If someone out there, I mean, taking a look at these kids right now, they're adorable and they need help. How can people help if they wanted to?
They could come to the Vietnam Volunteer Network, where they could volunteer for us. The minimum would be 1 week. I believe that human interaction, love and touch, and obviously development is one of the main things that these children need. There are other volunteer organisations as well as other NGOs that I put on my website because I like to give people a choice. With my organisation, I do not charge any administration fees. It's just a case of you share your pictures and your experience, and that then helps me to get and recruit more volunteers, which has been absolutely amazing. I've been averaging about 3 to 4 volunteers per month from around the world going to this centre.
So if you are out there and, you know, taking a look at these images from the children at the Gavap Center for Childcare and Protection and you want to help, definitely seek out Kim and her organization.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk more about the Vietnam Volunteer Network. We mentioned that you are trying to seek, basically, aid from anyone willing to help for those in need here in Vietnam, particularly Agent Orange victims and orphans. Tell us more about how Vietnam Volunteer Network works and how big is it right now?
I've got roughly 2,600 Facebook members,
wow,
which is brilliant. I've had a lot of views on YouTube. So between Facebook, YouTube and Google, I've been getting a lot of volunteers from around the world, including some adoptees that want to go back and volunteer and to give back in some way. I also believe passionately in corporate social responsibility. So I contact manufacturers and I'm able to get a lot of aid donated. Any sort of aid that I had managed to receive, whether it was toothpaste, toothbrushes or Sudocrem, they would actually pay for the shipment of it to go back to Vietnam for me.
Do you find it challenging to find members? How has that process been going?
I think it's been, I think I've been very lucky, very lucky. And I think it's because there are so many kindred spirits out there. And one of the amazing things is my volunteers, and they are absolutely priceless. So they always send me pictures of the projects that they're working on for me. And of course, they send me pictures of the children and they write about their experiences. And through word of mouth, people are then connected to, or have heard about my Vietnam Volunteer Network. So it's been amazing interviewing all of these people from around the world on Skype, which is what I do, because I have a very strict process of certain types of volunteers that
exactly
come
interviewing
to us.
them
Yes.
and putting them in different projects.
And security checks, yes.
How do you decide the projects? Do you connect with the different orphanage and centers here in Vietnam and get the volunteers to go directly there, or how does it work?
So what happens is I get an applicant coming in. I then process them, and then I set up the connection with and a time and a date with the orphanage for them, and I try to give them an induction if I'm here. If I'm not here, I have a local volunteer who's Vietnamese that can also speak English and give my foreign volunteers an induction around the orphanage and work with them. And what's really nice is that I just don't get American, Australian or UK volunteers. I'm getting more Vietnamese volunteers wanting to come forward, which is absolutely brilliant.
Tell us a little bit more about your volunteers. I mean, you are obviously based in London, the UK, but you have all these volunteers, at least 3 to 4 each month, right?
Yes.
What are some of the great stories? And they mostly come to the GovUp Center for Child Care and Protection. How has it been kind of seeing the direct help that these volunteers have been able to lend a hand and give the direct aid to the children at the center?
Absolutely amazing. And I think that's what helps to attract more members, because they see the actual work being done on a regular basis with all of the posts. And I think it's the smiles and the happiness in the children's faces. That is the huge payoff for my members as well as for the volunteers. And the bonding with the children, it just shines through on all of the videos and all of the films, pictures. It's just absolutely amazing. And to
for yourself as well.
Oh,
a great, meaningful way of paying back for what you have done.
Yes, thank you. But obviously, as I mentioned, my Vietnam Volunteer Network would not survive if it wasn't for all of these wonderful people giving back and paying it forward.
In her return trip to Vietnam this time, Kim has, for the first time ever, visited and delivered aid to Thanh Xuân Peace Village, which is the caretaker for 200 children living with congenital deformities, mostly caused by the effects of Agent Orange. So let's have a look at her trip.
This small face reminds Kim of Nhật, a boy with whom she felt one of the deepest connections at the center in GovUp. For Angela Russia, who comes from New York City and has dedicated 1 month to volunteering at the center in GovUp, today's meeting with children who are second or third generation victims of Agent Orange has motivated her even more to pursue her project.
Seeing the kids and working with them changed my life. I'm an actress by trade, and just seeing the effects of Agent Orange, especially the legacy all of these years later, it broke my heart. And in the West, we just people don't know enough about it, and it's sort of, they don't realize it's still a problem all these years later. So I thought, I want to go back. I'm hoping to make a documentary about it.
Amongst the nearly 200 children being cared for at the Peace Village in Thanh Xuân district of Hanoi, nearly 130 suffer from congenital diseases like cerebral palsy and Down syndrome, among others. They are the victims of Agent Orange that was preyed upon generations of their parents or grandparents during the war. Yesterday, Kim Browne and a group of volunteers came to deliver medicine, vitamins, as well as clothes. Today, they've returned to give the children drawing supplies and some stationery.
Đây là một niềm vui đối với chúng tôi khi mà đoàn Việt kiều Anh, trong đó có chị Kim, đến bày tỏ sự đồng cảm, sự chia sẻ rất sâu sắc đối với những trẻ em khuyết tật có liên quan đến chất độc màu da cam. Và đây cũng là sự giúp đỡ, sự động viên cả về tinh thần, cả về vật chất đối với các cháu, nhằm tháo gỡ một phần khó khăn trong cuộc sống của các cháu và động viên thêm chúng tôi, những người hàng ngày chăm sóc điều trị phổi chức năng toàn diện cho các cháu, có thêm nghị lực, thêm niềm tin.
Amongst the volunteers accompanying Kim Browne this time, there is Lê Thành and his organization Reaching Out. Like Kim, Thành too was an adoptee of a British family when the war was near the end.
And we were just amazed by the children, even though the children suffer from sort of mental and physical disabilities, how active and lively and enthusiastic they were. They were so full of life. They were so pleased to see us and welcomed us with open arms. It was very touching.
The first trip to the Peace Village in Thanh Xuân is part of Kim Browne's plan to bring aid to many more child care and protection centers across Vietnam, and not just stop at the center in Go Vấp. In her journey, Kim will surely continue to receive the support of friends who understand and identify with her love and care for these less fortunate children.
She has inspired me to go above and beyond and just give with all of my heart. I mean, she is so full of love and light, it's contagious. I thought I was a giving person, and she's just, it's infectious. She rubs off on people, she gives with all of her heart, she doesn't expect anything in return, and that's inspiration to me. That's what I've learned from her.
Now, I know that you're also involved in another mission we talked about. You're trying to connect the different volunteer organizations with the Vietnam orphanage villages. So not only the Go Vấp Center for Child Care and Protection, the Go Vấp Orphanage as we know it, but also different orphanages, village in the country.
Well, yes, there's also the Thu Peace Village in Ho Chi Minh City.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I send volunteers there as well and deliver toys and try to get a volunteer to help with some art therapy as well. Also the Buddhist orphanage in Nha Trang, who I go and donate to via the Viet Horizon Club, which is a local Vietnamese organisation. Also to Dalat, a orphanage there for ethnic children. Again, through the Viet Horizon Club. So it's absolutely brilliant. And then this will be my first time going to Hanoi, to the Peace Village. Also to Da Nang, the Dava Center. It was the first time going there, and I was so honoured to meet Miss Hien, who is the chairwoman there, and to see what she has built for these Agent Orange children. And we donated some pigs and chickens to the centre. We were the first organisation to donate pigs and chickens, and that was Angela, Rasham and myself. And Angela is my returnee volunteer, and she's also doing the film.
Yes.
And then in Da Nang to meet a rural family who actually suffer from Agent Orange and get no aid. There's 2 paralysed boys, one has cerebral palsy. And this old lady, she's about 62 and she's smaller than me, carrying her son from one bed into the living room broke my heart completely. And to see such poverty, so much more poverty than I've ever seen in Ho Chi Minh City. So we donated a cow to this family, which will help them economically in the future.
You can imagine what a cow could do for such a family. What is the main purpose of this trip? You've been in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Quang Tri, and Da Nang. Tell us more about the main purpose of this trip.
It would be about volunteering with the children, bringing new volunteers in and giving them an induction around the country, as well as to the orphanages and the children, and obviously delivering aid as well.
Tell us more about being in Da Nang and Quang Tri. These are, you could say, hotspot areas in Vietnam where Agent Orange has affected many people.
Standing on the Agent Orange hotspot at Da Nang Air Base, Angela and myself felt completely sick, really. We had migraines on the spot. And I stood there because I wanted to see what had caused so many malformations in all of the children that my organisation has been supporting for all these years. And it really made me very emotional, completely emotional to stand on there. And for me to explore outside of Ho Chi Minh and to try and replicate the same success that I had at Govap with the Dava Centre. I think there's about 80 children there that suffer from Agent Orange. They definitely need more aid and volunteers. What really touched me was this little boy who had cerebral palsy. And his brother was the one that was lying on the bed, and his mum had taken him and had to carry him. And obviously it was back-breaking work. And his personality really shone through because he was there. I gave him my camera. He was taking photos of us. I'd given him a teddy bear that one of my volunteers' mother and grandmother had knitted. Oh. And I gave it to the two boys. And the one who was more alert with the cerebral palsy, he was there holding that teddy bear and kissing it. As though it was, you know, like an Xbox to a child in the West. This toy was such a joy for this child. And to see such simple pleasures, you know, simple items give such pleasure to this child was heartwarming. And to see his smile and the way that he hugged me and interacted with Angela and Chuck was amazing. I just see their spirits and their personalities. But obviously, in the long term, I want more physiotherapists, either local Vietnamese or foreign volunteers who are qualified to be able to help with their regime, their physiotherapy, and to help them in some way.
Now tell us about the Tzu, a peace village. You mentioned that you have also been back and forth there, besides being back and forth in the Govap Center. Tell us about your experience there. What have you done there?
I've managed to bring lots of toys and sweets to the children, as well as a few volunteers. These children, again, are amazing. Their disabilities, wow. To see these children who have no legs just make do by getting from one place to another by getting on a little chair and just hopping on it. Really
inspiring.
Extremely inspiring. And to see their personalities shine through, you know, absolutely brilliant. And to see such joy, you know, in their faces when, you know, they get a little something, because I don't think they get that much at all. Obviously, the carers do the best that they can, but my volunteers try to, like the same at Govap, give that little bit extra of that love and that care, because the carers really have time to wash and clean the children, but my volunteers go in and they help to do that art therapy or any other projects as well with the children at To Do Peace Village.
Wonderful. Very meaningful work that you are doing. Please tell us a little bit about your life in the UK right now, besides Vietnam Volunteer Network, which is already a handful, I'm sure, very busy. What are you doing in the UK?
In order to sustain the Vietnam Volunteer Network, because obviously I pay for my own flights out to Vietnam, I pay for my own hotel, so I expect my volunteers to do the same, so none of that comes out of the charity money. So in order to do that, I'm a business systems analyst.
In terms of raising funds, you talked about going to the different manufacturers in order to get them to send products in order to aid the children here in Vietnam. How else do you raise the funds?
I normally post on Facebook. If I found out from the orphanage or from the Peace Village what they need, and I don't have the funds, then I will post on Facebook that I need a certain amount of money for this project, and I get people donating from all over, whether they be Vietnamese adoptees or people who have adopted from Govap, or even Vietnam veterans. It's been amazing. Individually, they have donated. And again, Latan, who is a fellow adoptee from the UK, with his Reaching Out project, did a lot of fundraising with the people from his work. And he has then donated, and he's on this trip to then distribute the aid that is needed using the fundraising that he had created.
Wonderful. A lot of aid you're getting from the friends that you've made throughout the world, basically. What would you say is your biggest dream now?
For more volunteers, more aid, and for justice for all Agent Orange victims.
In the future, will you continue? I mean, you mentioned this in the beginning, that hope is still in your heart that one day you will find your birth mother.
I really hope so. Being adopted, and because everything was lost and I only had my birth mother's name, I hope that if she is still alive, that maybe she has heard of me, and she might not know it's me, but that maybe I really want her to be proud of me.
What would you say to her?
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to live by giving me up to GoVap, and that I'm okay and I'm happy, and thank you so much.
On Vietnam Volunteer Network's website, you posted an entry saying, "Welcome to our Vietnam." Do you feel that? Do you feel Vietnam belongs to you and you belong to Vietnam as well?
Very much so. Vietnam is in my blood, definitely. And I've just seen how Vietnam has changed throughout the years, and how I always feel welcomed back to Vietnam. And I want everybody else, whether they are adoptees or whether they are foreign and volunteering for the first time, to see the beauty of Vietnam and to see what Vietnam has to offer and how stunning it is and how magical it is.
What are some of your kind of future plans in the couple of years ahead? Obviously, Vietnam Volunteer Network is big on the agenda.
Yes, it is. I really hope to expand to more rural areas in Vietnam where there's more poverty, especially with the Agent Orange victims or any of the victims who are suffering from, limbs being lost from the cluster bombs and unexploded ordnances in Vietnam from the war. And really, those are my main goals.
Yes. Well, best of luck in your future
much.
endeavors, and thank you very much for coming here and sharing your stories with us. And we thank you, as well as the volunteers of the Vietnam Volunteer Network, for all of you that you have done for those in need here in Vietnam.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And that was our edition of Talk Vietnam with Kim Browne, a Vietnamese adoptee who's come back to Vietnam and has dedicated her time in order to give back more to the country. That's it for this edition of Talk Vietnam. We'll see you more next time. Goodbye.